This is an AZ Court Help Legal Talk on CASA, Court Appointed Special Advocates, by Natalie Bryant, the CASA Recruitment and Training Coordinator in Coconino County. Thank you.
It's always a joy to share about CASA with people. CASA is really close to my heart, as before I worked for CASA, I was a CASA volunteer myself, so I always love getting to tell people about it. So CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates, and we are always looking for good people and volunteers to work with us. Our mission we're a national organization with different state chapters and county chapters, but the overarching mission is advocacy. So we want to be a voice for children who are involved in the juvenile court system, children in foster care who've been abused or neglected. And we gather around our volunteers who are appointed by the judges, appointed by the Arizona Supreme Court, and we support them as they provide that advocacy to help each child. And the focus of our volunteers is to help their assigned child have and find a safe and permanent and nurturing home. And there's advocacy kind of in every level. There's advocacy in the court, there's advocacy within placement and in family situations. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but a little bit about our history. So in 1977, Judge Sukup created CASA, and he was concerned that each child's best interests be consistently represented to the court. And as you probably know, if you're involved in the court system in any way, the attorneys represent child's wishes, and DCS and CASA advocate for child's best interest. Then in 1982, Pima County Superior Court established the first CASA program in our state. A few years later, the Arizona Supreme Court formally established a CASA program under the court's jurisdiction, and we were able to expand throughout our state. So a little bit about the history. I feel like it's always helpful to kind of understand where you are in a place and time based on legislation, especially when you work for juvenile court. So in the early 90s, legislation was passed that established CASA as a statutorily mandated program with specific funding. So that really made a difference in how many CASA programs there were able to be across the country. And our funding in Arizona comes, 30% of it comes from unclaimed lottery prize revenues. And then in 1994, CASA programs were established in each of Arizona's 15 counties. And since that time, we've really expanded and have served over time 24,000 children in the state of Arizona. And today, there are nationwide almost 1,000 CASA programs within the National CASA Network, and there are around 93,000 volunteers. So it's wonderful to be a part of a nationwide movement, but that also has such a specific community focus, whatever your county is in Arizona. So some facts and stats for you. So right now, there are more than 13,500 children in Arizona who are not in a home. They're either in foster care, group homes, or shelters. And right now we have about 1,200 CASA volunteers throughout Arizona serving, 2,351 children. That number those are discrepancies in a sense because oftentimes a CASA will take a group of siblings. So it's not a one-for-one situation always. Right now, the truth of the matter is that we only have one CASA volunteer for every 6 children. And we would love to see that be 6 for 6, so that for every foster child, we have a CASA volunteer, and we're working really hard to make that happen. So in Coconino County, we are I think we're the second largest county in the nation. So we're spread out. We at the moment have 34 active CASAs working with 53 children because of those sibling groups. we have 161 children right now in open dependency cases. So that means that we have over 100 children in our county alone who don't have a CASA to be their voice. What you might be wondering still, what a CASA volunteer is. And like I said in the beginning, I was a CASA volunteer before I took this job. And a CASA volunteer is truly just an everyday, ordinary member of the community who goes through the training necessary to advocate for a child in foster care. So you're appointed by the judge, again, to represent best interests of the child and during their time in child welfare system in Arizona. All of our kids are either abused or neglected. That's why they were removed from their home to begin with. So a CASA advocate is also, one of the only consistent adult presences that a child has through foster care. There's so much change and there's so much inconsistency. And one thing we know about the architecture of the brain is that if a child has one consistent, stable, and loving and nurturing adult, it can make all the difference in their outcomes in the future. And so a CASA advocate can be that person for a child in child welfare. Our volunteers come from all walks of life, all different careers, all different ages, different educational levels and professions. And we really feel like that brings a richness to the CASA program and to the children. So we're not just looking for one kind of person, we're looking for a person who feels like called or compelled to walk beside a child in one of the most difficult times of their lives. So, and the last, CASA volunteers are the eyes and the ears of the judge. They hold the wisdom of the community in the sense that they are looking at this case really close up and getting to know this child really well. And then they can say to the judge, this is what I believe is in the best interest of this child. And advocacy is about giving voice to the voiceless. And that's really one of the things that CASA volunteers can do so well. The roles and responsibilities of a CASA volunteer, I like to remind people that there are consistent roles and responsibilities across the board for CASAs, but also you bring yourself to this child, the child brings themselves to this relationship. And so every CASA relationship with a child looks a little bit different. But some of the things that we like to see across the board are that you develop and maintain a trusting relationship with the child. You show up when you say you're going to show up. You get on a call when you said you were going to get on a call. You are constantly gathering information. So you're researching facts and you're interviewing people involved in the case. You're talking and building relationships really with foster parents, with the service providers, with the teachers, with the DCS caseworkers, and everyone involved in the case. And that really serves you when it comes time to speak in court on behalf of the child, because you know all the players and you have a really good sense of what's going on. Another of your roles, if you're a CASA, is to monitor a child's placement. And so you're going to watch really carefully, how is this child doing in their foster home? How is this child doing in this group home placement? Assess their needs, see if they're getting the supports that they need, seeing that they're getting the services that they were promised, and reporting their successes and their needs to the team. Which brings me again, identify service needs. If you see that something isn't being done, that this child isn't getting medical attention, for example, isn't getting trauma-informed care in their group home, you're going to make those recommendations to the team. And you're also going to make recommendations regarding where you think this child should be placed in a more permanent setting. And then last but not least, I've mentioned it a couple times, but you actually provide a written court report of your findings when there are dependency hearings. And this is really to assist the court and the judge in making an informed decision about the child's future. It sounds like a big responsibility, and it is. I don't want to downplay that it is a big responsibility. And also we will train people to be able to do this advocacy, so you don't have to walk into it knowing anything about the system or anything about advocacy. We really just need people who are committed and have a heart for children. So best interest advocacy is what we talk and focus on. So you see the child here in the middle of this half circle. what that means to put the child at the center is to advocate in these different ways. So we're going to learn, first of all, learn all we can about the child that we're advocating for. We're going to learn about their family. We're going to learn about their history. We're going to learn about their needs, about their schools, about their development, all of that. We're going to engage them. We're going to engage and see them at least once a month and if possible more. And we're going to really develop a relationship with them and a trust relationship so that we can know what their best interest is. We're going to recommend on behalf of the child. So again, we'll be in court speaking up for this child, talking about whether we think that this placement, this foster home is a good placement for them, talking about whether or not they need additional services. And we will be that voice in court and in meetings. It's a collaborative role, which is why I initially talked so much a minute ago about how important it is to get to know all the players on the team, because you're really collaborating with them to ensure that the services that the child needs are provided for. And then last but not least, you'll write a report. Our volunteers write reports that are given to the judge before the hearing. And that's where you report all that you've learned, you report your recommendations, etc. One of the things that we have realized is a wonderful thing is that you do not have to do this alone. If you're interested, but it feels overwhelming initially to do it alone, you can be a co-CASA with your spouse, with your partner, with a friend or a coworker or a sibling, and you can share a case, you can go through training together, you can advocate together, you can, build this beautiful relationship with a child together. And that can be a really special way to enter into CASA. And then either you can continue as a co-CASA, or after you have your first case, you can decide that you're ready to do one on your own. We also have mentors. So if there's not someone that you want to be a co-CASA with, or if there's not someone you could be a co-CASA with, we can also match you up with a CASA mentor that can walk you through your first case. And so that's another opportunity. So who can be a volunteer? Who can be a CASA? You have to be a citizen of the United States. You have to be 21 years or older. We run a background check on all our volunteers and do a polygraph as well. So it's a pretty significant background check, but like I said, we do all the training, so you don't have to have life experience in child welfare. So there's 30 hours of pre-service training that all of our CASA volunteers do, and then 12 hours of training every year, ongoing certification requirements. So that is a little bit about what you need to put in order to become a CASA. Once you are a CASA, it takes about 10 to 12 hours a month of time spent with a child, time spent reading files, time spent consulting and collaborating with the team, and so on and so forth. I mentioned that a stable and nurturing and loving adult can make a huge difference in a child's life and actually change the architecture of their brain. And so some of the benefits of being a CASA advocate are that the children who have CASA volunteers, the children who've experienced profound abuse or neglect, they do so much better with a CASA. They are more likely to find a safe and permanent home. One of the things that's really important to me is that they're half as likely to re-enter the foster care system, which is a really traumatic experience for a child, and they're more likely to succeed in school. This is just a brief overview. There are more studies that have been done about the benefits of a CASA, but these are kind of the ones that I wanted to highlight today. So one of the things that I've been talking about as I'm looking for new volunteers is the diversity that we need in our volunteer pool. So as you can see here, our CASAs are mostly female. 83% of them identify as female and 17% as male, but the children who need a CASA are pretty evenly split. So that's one of the demographics that we're trying to address through recruitment. Another is age diversity. So right now we have 62% of our volunteers are over the age of 56, and you can see the other categories as well. 19% are between 46 years old and 55, 15% between 31 years and 45 years, and then just 4% in their 20s. This is a little bit just to show you that CASAs can be retired, they can be full-time employees, they can be part-time, they can be unemployed, and then we do have a few students as well. So this is these are Arizona statistics, and given how much COVID has changed the world and changed the ability to Zoom into meetings, you really can be a CASA even if you have a full-time job. And really, you do need to see the child once a month at minimum, but a lot of the other things can be done on Zoom now, which makes it more accessible to our full-time employees and people with careers. So that is a little bit about CASA. I really would, ask you to consider whether or not you would be an advocate or could be a good advocate for a child in foster care. But as important as that question is, just I'm sure that you all know lovely and beautiful people. And if you can think of someone who would be a good advocate for a child, I would appreciate it so much. Our community would appreciate it so much and would fare better if more people who had a heart for this work knew about it and knew what this opportunity was and how much it could make a difference in the life of a child.